Sriram, everyone. Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Sai Blossoms. As you all are aware, we are now into that phase wherein we unravel the mysteries and the power of this incredible faculty called the intellect.
Sayee, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this 9th episode of Sai Blossoms. I'm Lakshmi and we have our fellow young adults, Brother Sai Sundar Venkatakrishnan, Sister Shreya Puntambekar, and Brother Sriram, who will be joining us today on this fireside chat on the topic Cultivating Intuition. Our featured speaker for today is Dr. Ranga Jayaraman. I would like to welcome Uncle. Ranga Jayaraman is the director of Neurodiversity Pathways Program of Goodwill Silicon Valley in San Jose, California, the clinic director and CFO of Ashland Free Medical Clinic. He is a neurotypical father of a neurodivergent son. Dr. Ranga's current passion is to empower neurodivergent individuals with the desire and the ability to contribute to find meaningful, rewarding, and sustained employment and to help organizations in their journey to embrace neurodiversity inclusion in workspace. He also co-authored 2 books, Neurodiversity for Dummies and Autism for Dummies. Previously, Dr. Ranga was an accomplished senior executive of digital transformation, contributing innovative solutions and services to enable and support business strategy and growth in information technology and in higher education organizations. His real-life experience, executive leadership, and business background helps shape the classroom curriculum and learning experience that Dr. Ranga provides to neurodivergent individuals and organizations. Dr. Ranga is driven by the core belief that everyone is a unique creation of the universe, fully equipped to fulfill the purpose for which they are here, and that his life's purpose is to love all, serve all, help ever, hurt never. Thank you for joining us today, Uncle. We're so happy that you're here. So just trying to reminisce a little bit on this journey, right? We started in January and we're almost at the end of our 1-year journey where we started with strengthening our body, nurturing our mind, and then refining our intellect. Each of these steps sort of brought us close to our true divine in itself. And as we come closer to the culmination of this journey, let's just pause a moment to reflect on what happened in our previous session. So in our previous session, we all heard a thought-provoking conversation between Dr. Sundar Iyer and our young adults, Sister Sonali, Sister Sai Priya, and Brother Harish. We reflected on what mind and buddhi meant to each one of us and the subtle differences between them. Dr. Sundar Iyer also shared on how the light of God, unlike a flashlight, not just shows the path where you point at, right? But it illuminates in all directions and shows you everything around you very clearly, no matter where you are. We also heard a little bit on the voice of God, which is the intuition within us. And one beautiful reminder that stayed with me from the previous episode was to open your heart and listen to the voice that speaks in silence. And from then, I've tried to sort of keep myself silent and be by myself and sort of open my heart and listen to that voice. I'm sure many of you would have practiced many things that you took away from the previous episode. So moving on to today's episode, we'll be diving a little deeper about sowing, cultivating, and nurturing intuition. And that's how we have tried to put this together. We'll begin by exploring what intuition truly is and how we can start sowing these seeds within us. And sometimes if the seeds are already within us, how can we germinate them? And then we look at ways to cultivate it, to strengthen it, basically to tap into it more consciously in our day-to-day activities. And finally, we'll explore how to nurture intuition through simple practices, sort of allowing to grow, deepen, and guide our decisions. No matter whether they are big or small, with confidence and clarity. So before we move into today's session, let's just take a moment to ground ourselves wherever you are right now. I know some of us are driving back from work, some of us are finishing up the chores for the day. So let's just take a moment, try to find a comfortable position. And for those who are not driving, gently close your eyes and take 3 slow, mindful breaths, allowing your body to relax and your mind to settle. And now, with this calm and centered awareness, let us begin our session. And I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of questions, and we all did too when we started preparing for this episode. So Shreya, let's begin with something that we all cannot escape, or that's something which is not new to any one of us in this room, right? Have you ever been in a difficult situation, or a situation where you have to make an extremely difficult decision, maybe currently or sometime in the past?
Sure. So back in 2020, this was, peak COVID. I had graduated from undergrad, and I was actually looking for jobs for quite some time. I was applying and just nothing was working out. I had gotten some interviews and, it was slowly moving forward, but then all of a sudden it just wouldn't go any further. And this went on for some time. And finally, I think it was my mom who suggested, like, hey, why don't you apply for this master's program and for the spring semester of 2021. So at that time, I was like, okay, let me apply, and see what happens. So I went ahead and did that, and I got into the program. But I do remember trying to defer the starting date out to fall 2021. That's because I was kind of in two minds. There was one part of me that just really wanted to start working and get into the workforce and just, start learning new skills. But there was also this like odd fear, I would say, about, missing this program. I think the thought process was like, if I don't go forward with it, am I losing out on some great opportunity? So kind of in two minds. And I think at this point in time, I was like, okay, let me, sit and pray to Swami about it. And just wanted to kind of seek his guidance. But if I'm being honest, I think I was expecting maybe he'll do something dramatic, like come into my dream and tell me or something. So, started praying and, time did start ticking by, and we were kind of approaching the start of my semester. And I remember the frustration was really kind of seeping in, because I wasn't still sure what to do. And so finally I was like, okay, let me just talk to my family. And I had discussed it also with a mentor of mine, like a professor from undergrad as well, just going through the pros and cons of just, going forward with the master's program. And I finally decided to just, go for it and study further. But, I'm quite excited actually about this session today because, I think as I went through the program, there was always like a tiny part of me that was like, did I make the right decision by going forward with it? Which is why I'm very excited about today. I think with intuition, I feel like I've always had a certain feeling or prompting when it's come to sometimes other people or maybe a situation. But for some reason, when it comes to myself and having to make decisions regarding me, I feel like I'm not able to sense anything. But then again, maybe I'm just not tuning in enough. So very excited to be here today in this session.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Shreya. I think all of us go through that, right? When we are so close to our problem, it looks like a mountain, and then you don't see any way out, and we go through this confusion. Even after making the choice, sometimes we think, is it the right choice? And we don't know when the answer is going to reveal to us, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. And the simple thing like doing a pros and cons is something that's so practical, and sometimes it can help, when you see something on print, it's very easy to sort of believe that and sort of look forward to that. And thank you for sharing that.
Of course. But how about yourself, Lakshmi? Do you mind also sharing maybe an experience or maybe a difficult situation that you also went through?
Sure, Shreya. I think like I said, none of us can escape difficult situations. But before telling you about the difficult situation, I just want to share something that's very related to Sai Blossoms and a decision I made back in, I think, end of last year. So we were trying to figure out, I think, a group of young adults, we had come together. We were trying to plan what we wanted to do for the 100th year of Swami's birthday. And trying to think about this program, right? So we sat with Sister Dr. Rama Devi, and we went through multiple sessions where she spoke to us about body, mind, and intellect. And then we had decided we'll do the Sai Blossoms program where, we'll do each topic for 3 months, have an episode each month, and things like that. So when that plan had come up, as usual, Sriram and Padma Shri, they came up to me and asked me which particular episode I wanted to help with. And, instantly my mind was saying, why don't you do the January episode or the February episode, right? It was telling me, what's going to come. It's in the near future. You know your schedule. You can plan, prepare, and all of that, right? And then there was this voice that, not technically any sound, but there was a voice which was sort of louder than this, whatever my mind was speaking, right? And it was telling me very specifically, tell them that you will help them for the second episode of Intellect. It was too specific. I know. I was like struggling to see, what is this? Why is this coming to me even, right? And my mind was telling me, oh my God, Intellect, right? Later part of the year, closer to Swami's birthday, you're going to be busy with all of these things at center, right? And I was trying to sort of shush all of this noise in my head. And this voice was very clear again and again, telling me to say second episode of Intuition. So I went ahead and told them I'll help them with the second episode of Intuition. And lo and behold, certain things unfolded in my life this year. And I just want to fast forward to January. My mother-in-law called us one day and she said she had to get a surgery done, which she was sort of postponing for some time. And the doctor had told her she couldn't postpone any longer. So out of the blue, we had to sort of book our tickets, go to India, help her with her surgery, recovery, and things like that. So Swami had known, no way I could have helped with a January or February episode, right? And then when I came back, you might ask, what about the other months? I landed in a new job where my role was completely different from what I did in my undergrad and in my master's. So it was a really challenging position, but I wanted to do it to see how I can approach this, right? So I was extremely busy. I had given it my all, and I was extremely busy maybe for March, April, and May. And then my in-laws, my mother-in-law felt better, so they visited us, and she came here, and everything was good. And I was trying to juggle with this new job and things like that. And then suddenly she fell ill. And now comes the difficult situation that you asked me earlier. She fell ill and we had to take her to the hospital. And she had a life-altering diagnosis, which was very shocking to all of us. And this situation has been one of the most difficult situations in my life in the recent past. And I also want to share, it was very fast because it was just 3.5 weeks from the diagnosis. We sort of lost her, unfortunately, but it was very quick and coming all at us at once.
Yeah. No, sorry to hear about your mother-in-law, Lakshmi, and thank you for sharing. Actually, in your experience, you had brought up something important, which was there was a voice that was prompting you to say that, you're going to host the second episode of Intuition. And you listened to that voice. And then, of course, there was a series of things that had happened. But, being able to recognize that voice and follow it, I think is just what really, stood out to me as you were sharing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yes, Shreya. I think there's no way I could have done any of those episodes because I was back from India only in end of September. And then here I am for the October episode, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Shreya, if I may ask, the next step to difficult situations, right? How do you make these decisions? I know you said a pros and cons list. Do you have any other tools that you use or any methods that you use for these situations?
Yeah, so definitely pros and cons in the sense that, just discussing it with like close friends or family sometimes, just to get that another person's perspective, because I think when you're kind of in this situation, it's really hard at times to kind of see maybe a different side to it. So that's definitely one. But the thing that I do the most is I pray to Swami about it. I sit either in my altar or just like a quiet place, have a conversation, or even sometimes writing a letter always helps me. And actually, as of late, also I've been, asking him for sometimes signs. So I guess I would say those are two tools. Maybe I tend to use two or three to help me make those kind of decisions. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think those are great tools. Like writing a letter definitely lets you open up to Swami with all your problems, right? And then the answer comes to you somehow through someone or in some manner. Yeah, those are all really great ones.
How would you say you're able to make difficult decisions, Lakshmi?
So for me, when I'm in a difficult situation and have to make a difficult decision, a tool that I commonly use is having an open conversation with Swami and sort of doing like a role play. And maybe not always in a difficult situation. I sort of use this in my daily life, even when I'm cooking, right? Like, Swami, I'm going to put the salt. Like, do I do like 2 teaspoons or like do I do 1? So I sort of have this conversation. And oftentimes my husband even very jokingly asks, like, are you on a call with someone, right? Because I just talk out loud. And usually when I do this and when I sort of speak out loud, I get these answers somehow through either people or texts or messages, and sometimes even through social media, right? Yeah. So initially, I would say I wouldn't get my answers because I would have these conversations loudly, but I wouldn't get my answers because I would pray to Swami, Swami, you know what? This is my problem, and this is how I want it to end. Right? So I would have this very fixed notion of how my problem should end. But later I sort of started tweaking the tool because the tool was not working for me. I started praying only the first half, like, Swami, this is my problem. What do you want me to do? Or what would Swami do in this situation? And in most cases, I sort of have 4 questions that I answer to my own self, right? Would Swami want me to want me to do this? And would I want to do this? And then would my parents want to do this? And does this affect anybody? I sort of use those questions and then sort of make a decision. But in this specific situation where it was very difficult, especially making a decision for a loved one, right, for my mother-in-law, it was too overwhelming and I didn't have the time to basically sit at my altar, have this conversation with Swami. Too many questions going on in the head. And what I basically did was we used to take turns to take care of my mother-in-law. And when I used to go to have lunch, I used to sit in the room quietly and sort of have this conversation with Swami. And believe me, sometimes I got answers, sometimes I didn't because it was too sudden and too much to take. But it calmed my mind when I had this conversation with Swami. And I also want to say that one more tool that the doctor reminded me of, which Swami always tells us, right? Take one day at a time, one moment at a time, be in the moment, right? He took my hand, the doctor, when I was shooting all of these questions towards him and said this. And being the planner I am, it was very difficult and I had to learn for the first time how to sort of live without a plan, live in the moment. But definitely it sort of helped me center myself back and see in this moment, is everything medically under control? And is my mother-in-law feeling comfortable? Is everything okay? Rather than thinking, why us? Why this loud person? And why so sudden? And where is this going to end? And all of those questions. So that's how we made decisions during this difficult time.
Thank you. Actually, even I'm a planner too, and I would say there are times when I have like my own set of ideas, like how things should be or work out. But kind of like you mentioned, I think when you really just let it go, I feel like those are the times when the answers just kind of flow through. And you also brought up like a very beautiful phrase, which is one day at a time, one moment at a time, and just. I think this just very nicely reminds us, just be in the present and just take each moment as it comes. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and we have Ranga uncle. So Ranga uncle, we would love to hear from you. I'm sure you have many, many experiences. So could you just share 1 or 2 experiences where you faced a difficult situation and had to make a difficult decision?
Thank you, Lakshmi. First of all, let me start out with expressing really a deep, heartfelt gratitude to all of you guys who planned this and graciously inviting me to participate in this. Through you, I'm kind of vicariously living my earlier days of life, and thank you all for that. Both of you have touched on, like different spheres of our life, and I'll just kind of touch on another one in terms of a difficult situation. It had to do with our own Sayee organization. This is years and years and years ago in one of the centers that I was a member of. Through a series of difficult events that cascaded, the existing team of officers had to leave, and a brand new set of officers had to be selected and brought into the picture. And there was also additional tamasha that Swami had with that process also. But just to make a long story short, I ended up in the role of a devotion coordinator in that center. And in the process, at least a handful of people from the prior team were very, very much upset, affected, hurt, very human impact in terms of something like that. Because we all, when we get selected to play a role in the center, that's like, a direct, commission from Swami under certain circumstances. By the way, every such commission comes with a great deal of the burden of the badge. And sometimes when we lose track of it, perhaps, things like this could happen. And so with at least a few of them, I was the recipient of unadulterated, wonderful energy from them, towards me. And over a period of time, that was getting to me. It was getting to me in the sense of thoughts about other people that I've never had entertained in my life until that point in time were starting to arise. I can tell you they were not exactly good kind of feelings or thoughts. And so much so, my lower back was kind of killing me. That those emotions, they're like energies, right? They express themselves in different ways within our body. And I remember one day sitting in my prayer room for the meditation practice, and that was the first time, I think, if my recollection serves me right, that somehow out of the blue, a particular approach or strategy got implemented. Okay. Normally, prior to that, when I say for meditation, it's like Jyoti meditation, like going with the Jyoti to different parts and then basically ending in that thing. This time, I looked at him and said, until this point in my life, you have never put this kind of thoughts and feelings in me. Why now? And it's affecting the physical health of this body. So that was my difficult situation.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great tool, Uncle, meditation, right? And thank you so much for sharing that experience, because I think all of us in this call have also faced some difficult situations in our centers, and we've had to make some difficult decisions. So, Brother Sundar, having heard all of us and also interacted with many young adults in your region, do you feel that there are some other tools that we could probably use? And what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you so much, Lakshmi and Sriram, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your experiences. Each of our speakers here has been through unique challenges where the option was not easily available, or rather, easy option wasn't available at all. And they had to weigh their choices very carefully. And I feel I have been in many situations where I have been in many similar situations where the easy option also was not available, and also that it was I had to take the decision in the blind. And I think my go-to tool is Gayatri mantra, because my father, he always says this to me, that chanting Gayatri mantra sharpens your intellect, and when you keep doing it over a period of time, when you are faced with a situation where you have to take the decision, and there's nothing clear about the situation that you are in, the Gayatri mantra really helps you. And that's something that I kind of blindly followed. I don't I did not think too deep about this whole chanting, how does it work and all that. I blindly followed, and a lot of times it did really help me, right? And I realized all of this only when I introspected later on, that hey, this is something that helps me on my day-to-day situation. So I think my go-to tool is Gayatri mantra. I think that really helps me strengthen my intuition. And I think I would like to welcome Brother Sriram to our fireside chat. Brother Sriram, I'm sure you must have had many experiences in your life where you're faced with difficult decision. What are the tools that you used?
Yes, I am, brother. First of all, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to all of you guys. It's such a joy to always be amongst young adults. There's so much of honesty. There's so much of being real and vulnerable. So thank you to everyone, including Brother Ranga, right? And I think answering your question, Brother Sundar, I think I've also had my fair share. And in terms of what tools I've used, I think one of the simplest tools that I try using is what Swami has given. Swami has said, you don't need any fancy meditation technique. All you need is 11 seconds. Just think of me and think of me and only me, and I will appear in front of you. And there have been situations that have wanted me to call upon him with every bit of my intensity onto Swami. I'll narrate one. These guys talked about personal situations, a Sai situation, and I'll probably share one from a work situation. Right. So I work in a late stage kind of startup world. And I work in the medical device industry, so which is a very tightly regulated industry because we our implants are actually implanted by surgeons, right? And so it's a very tightly regulated industry. And so what happened was in our company, one of the roles, which is a quality role, was vacant. The director of quality had left the job, and there was a vacancy in that department. And it had been vacant for a while, and we were struggling to fill that position. And it so happened that during that time, what happened was the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, called upon us and said, "Hey, this was a Friday, okay? When they call upon us and say, we'll be in for an audit on Monday." And lo and behold, you can imagine the kind of jitters that all of us were going through. My CEO was freaking out. So was I. All of us were at our wits' end as to what to do. Right? And at that moment, when we were almost numb, in one sense. Sometimes, you have the whole fight and flight syndrome, but also sometimes you get so overwhelmed, you're so numb. And that's where we were. We were numbed out. We didn't know what to do. There was no way we were going to get ourselves lined up for this audit on Monday. This was Friday, literally 3 p.m. In the afternoon. So this was not going to end well. The gut feeling that we all had was, oh my God. And the repercussions were humongous because these results are posted. It's available for everyone to see the outcome of it. If it doesn't go well, it directly impacts the product because there could be a stay in terms of us rectifying all of these issues that are brought up, and only then can we go about marketing it, or even that could be pulled off the shelf for worst case, as well as the kind of hit we take from investors as well as his peers in the industry in terms of the perception game. All of that would take a huge hit. So we were all literally very, very, very worried and numb with fear. And that's when I had no choice at that point in time but to resort to Swami, right? And I used the technique that I just mentioned, that 11 seconds tried to calm all the noise. And even that is His grace, I tell you. Luckily, His grace was there, and I was able to truly calm myself for those 11 seconds. And very interestingly, there came the answer, like what Lakshmi was talking about. She gave that beautiful, experience of how this episode was chosen for her. Similarly, Swami arrived with a very clear answer. He said, "Buy more time." Okay, buy more time, and he says, "Ask for more time." And we discuss. So this is the interesting thing, right? Swami says very interestingly, there are 3 levels to all of us. There is the animal man within us, or the animal level, and therein comes the very powerful faculty of gut instinct. Because oftentimes I never understood this word intuition. Okay, I'll be honest with you. The word intuition that we have, cultivating intuition. Forget cultivating. I didn't even know what exactly intuition was. Okay, I thought intuition was this gut instinct that I had. Okay. That Swami says this gut instinct is the animal level. He says it's powerful. Make no mistake, it's powerful. Okay, and it all and when oftentimes the gut instinct sometimes tends to be right. So that is the gut instinct is there's a pit in all our stomachs. The next level says is the reasoning and evaluation that comes with the faculties of man. Right? We all have the ability to reason and evaluate. That's the level of the intellect. And this is that equipment that's given to us. And it says so many things. On the one hand, it says we need time. It agrees that we need time. But at the same time, if we ask for time to the FDA, literally it will send the alarm bells ringing in their heads, because they know something's up here. They just give you a courtesy notice and turn up. So if it starts, if we buy time, we are in a soup, because they know there's something up there. Okay, that is the human faculty of reasoning and evaluation. And then came this, I understood or experienced, not just understood, but experienced what intuition was. Here was Swami's voice literally just piercing through, saying, buy time. There was no doubt. There was no doubt. It was very counterintuitive, like what I just said, for the reasons I just said. And so what I did was I picked up the phone. I told them we need 2 to 3 weeks. We have a few folks who are out of office, which was true at that point. We are a startup, so we need to gather all the forces to be even halfway ready to, have you guys come over. And so that's exactly what I ended up doing. And lo and behold, the FDA, who don't need to give into anything of this sort, understood my situation, understood my explanation, which was unheard of generally. They have no rhyme or reason to even listen or give into all of this stuff, and they granted me the time. Okay. Now we had an external consultant that we had brought in to manage it, and he was like, "Oh my God, if you have taken extra time, you're going to have extra personnel from the FDA who are going to come in there and rummage and go through everything 6 ways to Sunday, and this is not going to end well." He even prepared our CEO and us for the worst possible outcomes given what the reality was. And at that point, again, I was shaken, and we were all shaken, and there's so much of noise, like what Lakshmi was talking about, that I couldn't even work. And therein I called upon this impressive tool called surrender, which I didn't know existed in my arsenal. Okay, and I had no choice but to surrender. I guess that's when people like me surrender, but I had to. I called upon Swami, and I said, "Swami, I'm not able to work. I'm not able to even handle this." So what I started doing was every literally 2-3 minutes, I would take this 11 seconds, call upon him. That would calm me. I would be able to work for 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes. I'd again get numb with fear, thinking my mind would rattle back and forth. Why didn't we fix all these things in the past? What all could they be looking for that we are missing? So it's hurtling between the past and the future, and not able to stay in the present. And therefore, I had to call upon Swami with all my faith and surrender. And because of that, I was able to begin working. And I worked my socks off for the next 3 weeks, burnt the midnight oil. This was, I had just had a kid. Sai center work, Sai work was always there. Was a pretty intense phase in every sense of the term. Probably sleeping just an hour or so every day. And so 2-3 weeks go by. Again, something happens. Like, there's no way we can correct everything that needs to be corrected. So generally in an audit, you don't expose your flaws. You make the auditor figure all of that out. No one exposes themselves and their flaws. But again, connecting to Swami, I'm like, Swami, this is not going to end well. The gut feeling, the gut instinct. And reason says so too. Of course, they're going to write you up for everything that you yourself know is lacking. There again, Swami comes through and says, open up a corrective and preventative action and call out all the flaws that you have and start working on what is the pathway to correcting it and how you're going to implement it. And that solution, again, I implemented it. And lo and behold, I tell you, 3 weeks later, not one FDA inspector, but 3 arrived, just as the the consultant had mentioned. And they went through just about everything. Every paper, every bit of paper was looked through. They went through everything, but they were so understanding of my situation and my explanations and all that I'd called out. They really enjoyed how I'd gone about even presenting all these so-called flaws. And they didn't even write a single observation. Forget any sort of, flaw. They didn't even write up a minor observation, and we passed through this and came out with a clean bill of health. And it was the rudest shock to everyone, including me. That's when you realize how Swami and the power of intuition, the way intuition works for gut, oftentimes your gut instinct always tells you, you know what, I told you so. It tries to, enforce itself. It says, I told you so, always, I told you so, this is what will happen, look, this happened. Okay, reason again says, it gives you could go this way or that way, you could choose a path in the fork and stuff, but you always don't know. But intuition happens in a flash. It's a lightning that comes through the dark clouds, happens in a flash, and like Brother Sundarayar said, there is no doubt. And interestingly, there was no attachment. It was not that I was married to what had come through. I explained as to why this would be the best option. If my CEO or my consultant wouldn't agree, I was open to not saying it, but they were also numb with fear. They just let me act. And so this is the way that gut instinct, reason, all of them surrendered at the feet of intuition. So the rest of the folks surrendered to me, I surrendered to Swami. So it was a cascade of surrender and this incredible tool called surrender and the grace of the Lord. And I tell you, it is only the grace, the sheer grace. Because I'll just end with this, that even right now when I said the starting prayer, I was thinking of Swami and my phone buzzed. And that distracted me. As I was connecting it, that distracted me, and I half had to open my eye and look whether I'd forgotten to unmute my mic, and I was saying this quietly, right? And so even the ability to connect to Him is His grace, which may or may not happen, and I'm so grateful. So the tools that you asked for, faith, calling upon Swami for those 11 seconds, and surrendering to Him, and His grace has to flow through for us, for the voice of intuition to strike home. Thank you, brother. Hope
very nice, and such an incredible experience, Sriram, brother Sriram. I think all our speakers here, right? We shared an experience from different facets of our life, be it personal, professional, Sai organization. I think so wonderfully put by everyone, and thank you so much, Sriram, for kind of very clearly explaining, the 3 things: the gut instinct, the reasoning, which has got to do with the faculty of intellect, and the intuition. Because we are talking about intuition in this particular episode and how do we cultivate it, nurture it, I would like to put you on spot again and ask, can you, for all our fellow listeners, in one sentence, what is the definition of intuition? How do you understand intuition after all the experience that you've had?
No, I think for me, it's simple, brother. I think it is the voice of the Lord. It is the state of consciousness brought into the conscious, and it's above mental faculties and above sensory perceptions.
Great, wonderful. And thank you so much again, Sriram. I think you have set it brilliantly for the second half of the episode. I know whatever you explained, I think I would like to pick Ranga Uncle's brain onto delving deeper into the definition that you just mentioned, right? So, Ranga Uncle, welcome back. I would like to ask you a couple of questions. Now that we have defined our understanding of, or vaguely understood what the definition of intuition is, can you please tell us where does this intuition actually originate from? And why bother with intuition? Like Sriram said, right? Like there is gut instinct, there is reasoning, and then there is intuition. Why bother with intuition and why not reason everything, right? It seems like a very obvious choice, and it's also a very easy one. So, would you shed some light on this? Thank you.
Thank you, Sundar, and thank you, Sriram, for that amazing sharing in terms of a workplace type of experience. I'll start out with again, like my sort of understanding of or definition of intuition. We all may have taken tuition when we're going through, maybe like schooling or something like that. When do we take tuition? We're having some challenges and difficulties, and we get into a tuition situation with a teacher, and we are the student, and we are asking questions, getting clarification so that we can, make progress. So to me, intuition means it is tuition from deep within. We're getting tutored, in with respect to whatever it is that we are trying to get clarity on. Okay, the question that Sundar raised, where does this originate from? And this is a deep question. And in order to sort of, address that question, I'm going to have to walk us through these layers that kind of surround us. And layers is not even an appropriate analogy. I'll explain this in a little moment. We've all heard about that, Panchakoshas, and Swami talks about that, and we have all had a discussion. None of us have any issue recognizing that we have a body. I have a hand, I have 5 fingers there, I got a bald head. We're able to very much, appreciate our physical presence. And boy, that presence, is it compelling? Is it magnetic? I mean, think about our attraction to Swami's form. It's kind of, like when Swami passed away, I was sobbing like a little baby in my shower because I never considered myself as a person with deep level of attachment to anyone. And yet, for some reason, when Swami passed away, there was this, I don't even know what to say. I was just sobbing like a little baby. So, like this body attachment that we have is very real, and body is very real to all of us. We're using it right now to talk and listen and see and smell and touch and all of those things, right? So no issue there. And that's the most concrete layer, if you will, a very physical layer. Then there is the aspect of the pranamaya kosha, our breathing, right? And we know that the body can sustain itself for weeks even without taking food. Mahatma Gandhi demonstrated it over and over again to get his way in terms of getting people to line up and do what needed to be done. But few of us can last more than maybe like a couple of minutes. If you're, of course, a diver with an amazing level of control of your emotions and all of that, without any supportive gear, you could go down and be there for quite a while. But even that is measured in minutes, not longer, right? So there's something about this layer that is far more important. Now, pranamaya kosha, we can think of it as like, breathing, but actually breath is the physical aspect of the pranamaya. Imagine, for example, right now, I ask you to think about your right foot thumb. You know that it is alive and well, don't you? You can feel it. You can feel it kind of the moment you put your attention on a particular part of your body, you can feel its vibrancy, you can feel its aliveness. It may feel like a little vibration or tingling or something like that. That means this pranamaya kosha permeates through the entire physical thing. It's not just the breath. And then there is something that is subtler than that. Swami says it's the manomaya kosha, and that he says has kind of these two parts there, the manas and chitta. There's all the memories, and then there is the part which is I kind of think of it as the lower mind. It is the part that is one that's capable of experiencing fear, lust, anger, all of those things, kind of, bounce around in that place. And that's the one that has all the thoughts and everything. And when we feel anxiety and depression and things like that, they are sort of rooted in that. And, these two parts, the memory and this part, they kind of tend to get into like a dual retanayanam is what they say in Tamil, but basically like a duet, okay? Now, from a neuroscience point of view, this is your amygdala and the hippocampus part, which is sort of a primitive part of the brain, top of our spine, and then that part surrounding that thing. And it's extremely important. I mean, Sriram, you brought up this question of gut instinct, right? Gut instinct in terms of those reflexive actions on the basis of sensory signals to keep us safe or to run away from danger, or in the worst case, freeze, right? Fight, flight, freeze resides in this part of our existence. And by the way, it's a very useful thing. Please do not think that I'm anyway putting down any of these layers. They all have sacred purpose, right? But then more refined than that, subtler than the mind, is the Vijnanamaya kosha, which again consists of two parts. There's the part that we immediately relate to, which is the buddhi, reasoning, planning, prioritizing, and strategizing, and pros and cons, right, wrong, all of those kind of stuff. But it's not only that. There is the sense that I'm the doer that also resides in that layer. And it's very important. For us to go through day-to-day life, we do need to have a sense of self, a sense of agency, a sense of doership. It's important. Okay? And when, like for example, Shreya was talking about in her situation, she had these two different options. There's the pros and cons that go with those options. And our intellect is, our buddhi is very, very powerful for that, of laying out, the options. What are the dimensions by which we must evaluate those options? Looking at all of the plus and minus of each of those options, even do some Pareto optimal kind of thinking in terms of trade-offs, like this option, if we go, that's good, this is a little bit lower, but this other one is really good, but this is a little less. So we're able to even make like multi-objective optimization kind of analysis using our thing. And then there are situations, and by the way, for the most part in our life, we go with day-to-day various situations, decisions, and actions based upon the mind layer or the manomaya kosha and the vijnanamaya kosha, and that is perfectly legit. Okay? But then our master isn't easily satisfied. He knows why we are here. Even though we think we are here for X, Y, Z, he knows why we are here. And he has to send us experiences to help us recognize and realize both the power and the limitations of these tools that he has equipped us with. That's the kind of situation that you all have kind of touched on. I loved what Sundar said, and that is one of invoking, instead of the intellect Shakti, to invoke the mantra Shakti, right? The power of the Mantras are powerful, right? They help us connect with the unseen, unknown, in effect. And so we do recognize there are situations in which we've done everything that we can with the intellect and it comes up short. That's when we have to take the intuitive leap of faith. Sriram highlighted the importance of faith. And by the way, if I take a leap of faith, I am surrendering. Am I not? And so how does it all relate, right? Gayatri Mantra, which is just amazing, amazing, amazing mantra. It is an aphorism. It is a sutra. It is pregnant with meaning. Most of us, like we engage in the chanting of the mantra, sometimes we can be very vigorous and energetic. Long time ago for Gayatri Japam, event, somehow got an inner prompting that says no 1008. Do a few with all the bhava that you could summon into putting every syllable of it. And then during the COVID period, he put me through like nearly a year of sort of evolving a deeper understanding of Gayatri Mantra. Where I'm going with this is this. In the Gayatri Mantra, the secret sauce is revealed. We start with Om, and then we declare that the physical layer and the subtle layer and the causal layer, Bhur-Bhuva Swaha, they all come from Tat Savitur Varenyam. These all originate from the same source. And I can keep singing the glory of this source, Varenyam, 10,000 years as the Amazing Grace song goes. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we have no less to say than sing God's praise. We have no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. It's infinite ocean, right? So Tat Savitur Varenyam, and we contemplate on the effulgence, the glory of that source, okay? Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. We need something to hold on to because source is just too esoteric. So we think of it, we imagine it, we visualize it as this effulgence. I loved what Lakshmi said at the beginning about recall from, the previous session, God's light is not a torchlight. God's light is the sunlight. It illumines everything. So we are we're basically imagining it as that effulgence that defies description, okay? And Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, I contemplate on it. And then the contemplation takes place in our intellect, okay? But we recognize that effulgence, that glory, the source is beyond our intellect. So we surrender. Dhyo yona prachodayat. May you illumine our intellect because you are beyond me. Okay. Intuition. Okay. So we talked about Vijnanamaya Kosha. Then there is a deeper one. Swami calls it the Anandamaya Kosha. But in popular parlance, haven't we expressed times in our lives? Maybe it's in a bhajan hall. Maybe we're leading it or maybe we're following it. However it comes about, as you pointed out, Sriram, it's the grace of Swami. We forget about our body. We forget the consciousness of our breathing. We lose consciousness of our mind or intellect. We are filled with this inexplicable joy when we let go of all those attachments to the body, to the breath, to the mind, to the intellect levels, filled with pure joy, pure peace. We've all experienced it. We wish we could just stay there forever, but sooner or later, these things, the Maya just comes and grabs hold of us again. Intuition is a flash of lightning, an instantaneous download into our intellect of an insight, of a solution. And in the intuition, flash of intuition, there is no doubts. If there is doubt, it's not intuition. This is something that also Dr. Sundarayar mentioned in the last session. So the origin, the source is from the very source, because Anandamaya Kosha in Sat Chit Ananda, that is the layer that is closest to the Sat and the Chit, the pure awareness and the pure existence. And that pure awareness, pure existence, because it was really bored with just a singular, lonely existence, I decided to separate myself from myself so that I can love myself. Where does that love reside? Where does the compassion reside? Where does that peace, truth, Satya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema, Himsa, they all reside in that Vijnanamaya Kosha. And that is the source of intuition.
Thank you so much, Ranga Uncle, for very clearly explaining the source, and also why I actually, if you don't mind, why bother with that intuition and not really reason, right? So I know you shared your experience earlier, and I would like to know, how did you use this tool to actually help in your situation? How did it help in your situation? I think that will be really easy for us to follow.
Yeah, really, very important question. And I will share that. I will also make one other observation about, the mind and the heart. Okay, the heart layer is the Anandamaya Kosha. The mind creates the chasms. The heart crosses them. The mind divides. The heart integrates. And that's why in Swami's teaching, he says this: love all, serve all, help ever, hurt never. That all is an unqualified declaration of deserving love, deserving help. There's no qualifications there. Okay, back to my conundrum of experiencing not so good feelings about my fellow beings in a Sai-centered context. So I told Swami that, Swami, you never ever had these type of feelings in me before. Why now? It is affecting the physical health. I need your help. And then I closed my eyes, started doing meditation, and a flash of insight took place. And it's hard to sort of transcribe that, okay? And I'm going to try to transcribe it in a way, but that's not the way it comes about. I'm going to transcribe it into a conversation, but it wasn't a conversation. But for the purpose of describing it to you, I'm going to have to make it like a conversation. I heard Swami's voice. He said, you're a lightning rod in the center. The duty of a lightning rod is to be the stuff that the lightning strikes and to conduct that energy down into the ground. And then he said, but be careful. Be grounded, because otherwise we're going to get fried. I said, Swami, I don't know what you mean by be grounded. Then he said, the lightning rod viewed in the opposite direction is an antenna. Be grounded in me, draw my love, and radiate that love out as an antenna into the center. And I kind of woke up, if that makes sense. It's like a reverie. It's like I was shivering all over, like thousands of volts of electricity had jolted me. It's like a lightning really actually struck. And I was sweating everywhere. And in that state, I told Swami, this is now actually telling Swami, I said, Swami, I still don't quite understand this drawing love from you, but here is what I'm going to do. I hope this is what you want me to do. I am going to, in every day in my meditation, imagine that we are in Bharti, in the darshan line. And these fellow beings of mine are also present, and you come to them every single time. Give them a pada namaskar. You're materializing vibhuti for them. You're applying it in their forehead and you're blessing them. I'm going to envision this scenario every single day I sit down for meditation. And I started doing it because I felt that this was a command from him and I needed to do it. Couple of weeks, maybe a month or two later, Saturday morning, I get a call and I answer the phone. It is one of those people on the other end. The question was, are you going to the regional meeting in East Bay? I said, yes. Could you give me a ride? I said, okay. So I went and picked up the person and we're driving to, about 45-minute drive or something like that. We had the most wonderful heart-to-heart conversation you could imagine in the car. We reached the destination and we get into the meeting, whatever it is, like a regional retreat planning meeting or a Akhanda Bhajan meeting or something. Anything and everything I said, the other person would just simply counter it, critique it, put it down, all kinds of things, okay? Meeting gets over. We get back in the car. Again, peace and quiet. I mean, in terms of very beautiful conversation. I gave rides like this for the person, I think something like 15, 18 months. Okay. And then one ride, the last ride, this person turned to me and said, Ranga, I'm in this and this and this kind of situation, and I don't know what to do. What do you think I should do? And I kind of turned to the person and said, you want me to tell you what you should do? And the person said, I've come to recognize that your heart is pure. You don't have a hidden agenda. Yes, I want you to tell me what it is that I should do. I don't remember what I told the person. That was it. From there on, I never got a call for a ride. That was a signal for me that, okay, Swami's direction has been followed and the problem has been resolved. And that was how that situation resolved. And I can tell you, no amount of my intellectual analysis of this situation would have ever brought me to the solution. So much so, these days, sometimes I tell myself and do this, and also sometimes advise other people when they're completely in a situation, they just at their wits' end. I tell them, stop trying to solve the conflict or situation in this plane. Elevate yourself to the subtle level. Recognize your connection and the other person's connection to the source and appeal to the source to help with resolution.
Thank you so much, Ranga uncle. And I really appreciate and I'm very grateful to you to explain the power of intuition and how you tapped into it to solve such a difficult situation that you were facing at the organization. And I think at this point, I would like to emphasize on one thing. I feel it's a key takeaway from this episode is to be able to cultivate such an intuition, the practice, to be the consistency in doing the meditation. I think in Ranga uncle's case, he was so consistent in doing this meditation without an expectation of a result. I think that is something that I believe is very, very important, or maybe a prerequisite for the flash of guidance or light to come to us. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Sister Lakshmi, Sister Shreya, and Brother Sriram back. And I would like to go around the table and like to see what would all of you like to take up and work on in the future in order to strengthen the intuition. Sister Lakshmi, do you want to share?
Sure, Brother Sundar. I think for me, it's, one thing is to pause and, sort of hear that voice in silence. And the other thing about it, which is most difficult for me, is to act. Because, a lot of these things are going on in your mind is talking over that voice and things like that. So it's very difficult for me oftentimes to act. I'll just give you two short experiences. One where I acted on my intuition and one where I didn't. So we have this, we recently started this seva of making garlands for Swami at our center. And we take turns. And one particular week, it was my turn. And usually I buy the flowers on a Friday. And I happened to go to the grocery store and on a Wednesday, and this was earlier in the week, and I saw these beautiful lilac chrysanthemums. Right, I was so drawn towards them, and something within me was very strongly telling me buy them for the garland. And then, as usual, our monkey mind comes up and says, hey, on a Wednesday, they're going to, dry and the color is going to become brown and it's not going to look good and all of that. And then finally I had, sort of shushed this voice and took the courageous step, I would say, in that situation, to buy those flowers. And I bought those flowers. And I was going to make a garland. And usually we offer this garland, and also some devotees offer saris to be put on Swami's chair. And that particular week, lo and behold, one of the devotees said they wanted to offer a sari, and it was a green sari, but with a lilac border and pallu and things like that. It's so beautifully matched with that sari, and it was a beautiful experience, to act on that voice. And now let me tell you, in a place where I didn't act on that voice. So I was in a bhajan, and I was sitting in the bhajan. And before the bhajan started, I sort of heard this voice saying, get up, go forward and sit there. And I didn't want to do this. And the bhajan had started by then. And I also felt that, it's not right when the bhajan's going. All of this reasoning was going on in my head, right? This part is reasoning more, like Swami wouldn't like it and all of that. But this voice was like very strong in me saying, get up, go forward and sit. But I somehow didn't act on it because I was too, worried how it might be looked upon, right? So my friend had just entered the bhajan hall, and she sort of tapped on my shoulder just to say she'd come in. And I just turned to smile at her, and I was in for a very big surprise. So little side story here, okay? So I had a very traumatic experience with a dog when I was a child, and I was I started fearing pets a lot. And in this situation, when I just turned to say, smile at my friend, I saw this big dog sitting next to me. And the dog was, whoever house the bhajan we had gone to, it was their dog. It was very quiet, very calm, just listening to the bhajans, not a single bark. But this, I started to break a sweat, and I was in fear. And until the end of the bhajans, I was in fear. I never enjoyed those bhajans. So there are many times when I don't act on this voice, and it becomes difficult. I have to face the repercussions of it. So for me, I'll take back, if I want to take back one thing, I want to act on that voice and, work on that. Yeah. What about you, Sriram? What do you think you want to take back?
I'm curious to hear from Shreya, and then I'll chime in. Go ahead.
So I know earlier, I had mentioned when I'm faced with a situation, I've been actually praying to Swami for like a sign, and sometimes what happens is I notice the signs do come, but maybe like the outcome, it takes a little bit of time for it to kind of, manifest or for it to happen. And that's when I kind of notice that my mind really starts coming in, and then, there's all this like questioning that's going on. And then pretty much, my faith kind of just goes out the window, I would say. So I think one of the things I want to just start working on is like really developing and strengthening, my faith that, okay, even the signs that I'm seeing are in fact Swami answering me, and just be very confident in that. So I think that's something I would want to work on. Brother Sriram, how about you?
I think, thank you for sharing that, Shreya. As ever, you are the epitome of why is keeping it real and vulnerable. I genuinely, there's a certain likability about you that I must mention. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a combination of what Brother Sundar and Brother Ranga mentioned. What do I mean by that? For me, I think the tool is Gayatri Mantra and the chanting of it. But I agree that I oftentimes don't do it with that sense of devotion. Yeah, it's not a number of times like what Brother Ranga mentioned, which with the devotion that you do. Okay, when you have bhakti, devotion, you get shakti. We all, through all our experiences, was there. We got strength. That will give you yukti, the skill to manage the situation. Skill. But how can you actually hold on to that skill is when you have rakti or attachment to the Lord. Because we couldn't maintain it until we kept tapping into the Lord. That will give you mukti or liberate you from that situation at least that you're in. Forget the ultimate liberation. So, that bhakti gives shakti, which gives yukti, which is skill, and ensures that you have it only when you have rakti or attachment to the Lord, and that will give you mukti and liberation in that, at least in that relative moment. So this is the whole formula that this entire episode has downloaded to me. This is the download that I have gotten. Just wanted to share that. But I'm excited to hear what Brother Ranga has to say. Sairam.
Okay, so I think what I would say is this. We actually have a prescription that has been given to us. And you talked about Lakshmi, our acting on it. And Shreya, you were talking about recognition and then having that faith to say this is a signal. And in that sense, let's take code number one, meditate and pray daily. And it's very interesting that the words are in the order that it is in. It starts with meditate and then pray daily, because even prayer, the way to pray, we need direction. And by the way, it's not like the way I pray is the thing that is appropriate for Sundar and all of that, because we come with that hundreds or thousands of years of, all the composite of experiences that have all been imprinted into this particular rendition, right? So what is the most appropriate thing? Swami only knows appropriately. Of course, he's given the in Kali Yuga that chanting of basically namasmarana is remembrance, and remembrance of the Lord's name is very powerful. And so to pray, we need the guidance in terms of what is an appropriate way for us to pray. I remember way back, when Swami was visiting Sundaram in Chennai, there was a discourse, actually just, the sky opened up and started pouring, but people of course stayed. But he was saying, people pray for this and pray for that. They really don't know what to pray, how to pray. And then he broke into Tamil and said, the right prayer is Arul Purivai, Arul Purivai. It is not about get rid of this problem for me or fix this problem for me. Give me the grace. That's what, like that thing, as you're saying, Sriram, that Shakti going to that equipping you with the ability and the energy to be able to deal with it with confidence that Swami is acting through you as an instrument, right? So in order to get to that state, we need to commit to a regularity of our personal sadhana. I know this whole series got started on the premise that you as young adults, as not so young adults like me and a whole lot of other people also, the foundation for our practicing spirituality has to be the personal sadhana. We shouldn't get too busy to compromise the personal sadhana. I don't know about you guys, if I for some reason miss the meditation practice on a given day, that whole day is off for me. Somehow I feel out of center, not connected, not grounded. It's just not a good feeling. So I never, try not to ever do that. I think my latest is like I'm going on about 3 years without a break. And that's only Swami's grace. So I think committing to a meditation practice, you can start out with whatever, you are aware of. And I'm sure there are plenty of, guidance on that in terms of, sitting down and quieting down yourself. I mean, there's one more thing I want to say in the relationship to intuition. Since intuition comes from way deep within, it won't come until we establish that silence and all the outer layers. Starting with the silence of the body, what does that mean? Sitting in a place and not be bothered by the little itch on the tip of the nose, the little ache on the, knee or whatever it is. And to regulate the breathing, to calm the breathing down, not breathe at our 15, 16 breaths per minute, but to slow it down to, a level where our sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system goes into the rest and digest mode rather than the activated mode. That in turn calms our thought processes down. Breath and mind are connected very strongly. That calms our emotions down. That then gives a clearer state from which to contemplate on things. Swami says concentration, contemplation, and then the meditation. Concentration is to be able to calm the body and the breath down and to concentrate with one's mind on a chosen thing, whether it's the breath or the light. And then, of course, the contemplation is, I loved what Dr. Sundarayar said in the last episode. Contemplate on the subtle. And that is a practice that we're going to have to commit to. And so probably, if you guys are okay, we will engage in a very small contemplation practice. So assuming that you are in a place to sort of do this. If you're driving or anything else, please listen to it and not put yourself in danger. Okay, so let's make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes. And then take a deep breath. Elongate the out breath to be longer than the in breath. One more deep breath. One more breath. What happened just now? There was an enunciation of Om, and there was a hearing of Om. We are sure about that. But how did that come about? What are all the things that came together in order for the enunciation to happen? There was an intention to articulate Om that formed in my mind, and a breath was taken in, and my diaphragm muscles started contracting to push that air out, and some additional subtle phenomena happened in my brain to tension my vocal cords just so that the air that passed through them vibrated that vocal cord just so to initiate the first part of the Om, build it up with energy, and then to slowly let it attenuate into the silence from which it came. Before the Om, there was silence, and after the Om, there is silence. The vibrating vocal cords imparted that vibration into the breath that was going out of my nose and mouth. And those airwaves, sound waves, reached this microphone in front of me and vibrated the diaphragm in it, converting the sound vibration into electrical signals, which reached my computer audio-visual card, got processed, sent out through the network to the cloud, and the cloud distributed it to all of your computers and phones and its speaker to create a vibration in those speakers to convert them into sound waves that reached your ears, vibrated the eardrums, converted that into neural electrical signals that reached your brain, and your brains interpreted that as the I heard Om. So many physical phenomena arose out of nothing, lasted for a while, and then merged back into the nothing from which they came. Underlying those physical phenomena, there were so many subtle phenomena that came into play. Governing and driving those subtle phenomena are all the causal forces that came into play in order for this thing that happened to happen. But where did that causal forces come from? Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, everyone. With that, we come to the end of the episode, and we'll soon meet you for the final 10th episode of Sai Blossoms. Have a good night, Sairam.